What happened to my wife? Okay, I don't know where else to put this. The police have been useless, my family thinks I'm crazy, and I'm starting to believe them. I need to know if anyone has seen or heard of, anything like this happening before. First, some facts. My wife Clara is 29, 5'4", slightly overweight, maybe 130 pounds. Long, muddy brown hair, but with the most striking blue eyes you've ever seen. She disappeared from our home on the night of October 18th. She was last seen going into our main bathroom for a shower around 7:30 p.m. I was in the living room, which has a direct line of sight to the bathroom door. She never came out. Before you ask, no, she didn't leave me. We were happy. She was a bit high-strung, imaginative, but happy. She relied on me. That's what makes this so impossible. I guess all of this started about 2 weeks before her disappearance with the sink. I was checking my portfolio on my laptop when I heard her gasp from the kitchen. "Michael, can you come here a second?" I'll be honest, I was annoyed. It's not like she was working like me, she was just doing dishes. When I joined her in the kitchen, she was just staring into the sink, her hands all soapy. I remembered her saying, I thought I saw blood in the water. I looked. There was a faint pinkish swirl going down the drain. I told her, "It's just ketchup, Clara, from dinner. Relax. You're always letting your imagination run wild." She got this look on her face, this little girl lost look she'd get when she knew I was right but didn't want to admit she was wrong. "You're probably right," she said softly. "It just looked so dark." I went back to my laptop thinking case closed, but the next night, the same thing happened. This time, her voice was shaking. "Michael, please, it's back." I sighed loud enough for her to hear and went in. There was a reddish-brown liquid pooling near the drain. I'll admit, it gave me a pause as I almost bought her flight of fancy, but it wasn't hard to come to a logical conclusion. "It's rust, sweetheart," I said in my most reasonable voice. "The pipes in this place are ancient. I'll call a plumber." The relief on her face was instant. "Oh, rust, of course. I'm just being silly." She believed me. She always believed me. I forgot to call the plumber. Work was crazy, and I had gotten into Vampire Survivors, so I didn't have much free time outside of work. Either way, it slipped my mind. Then, whatever was going on spread to the shower. I heard her scream, a short, sharp sound. I paused my game. The water shut off a minute later. "You okay in there?" I called out. She came out, pale and shivering. "It was in the shower, Michael. The blood. It came up from the drain." "Those darn pipes. Don't worry, it's just the rust," I told her, unpausing my game to collect a skull. "The plumber," she started. "I've got an appointment for Friday." I lied. I was going to call the next day. I swear I was. I never called. The rust kept showing up, in the sink, in the shower, once in the toilet bowl. Every time she'd look at me with those big blue eyes, seeking reassurance. And I gave it to her. I told her it was sediment, a trick of the light. I had it under control. I was the man of the house, right? That's my job. On the 18th, she went for a shower. I was grinding gold. 2 hours later, I realized the water was still running. A steady hiss. "Clara, you're going to use all the hot water," I yelled. No answer. Whatever, I thought. Another 30 minutes, I finished a match. The silence from the bathroom felt heavy. "Clara?" I called again. Nothing. A cold dread started to creep in. Had she slipped? I'd have to call an ambulance, deal with hospitals. The thought was exhausting. I knocked. No answer. The door was locked. That in and of itself was unusual. She always complained about me not being able to keep my hands off her whenever she undressed. I threw my shoulder against the door. The frame splintered. The bathroom was full of steam. The shower was running. The curtain was closed. She was gone. Her towel was on the rack, dry. There are no windows, no vents big enough for a person. I was sitting 10 feet from the only door the entire time. I never left my seat. The police were a joke. They took a report, searched the house half-heartedly, and basically implied she'd walked out on me. "Are you sure you two weren't having problems?" the sergeant asked, not even looking at me. "We weren't, and there's the blood," I said, my voice cracking. "Blood? Not, crime scene amount, but in the drains, for weeks. She kept seeing it." They exchanged a look. You know the one. This guy is unhinged look. Sir, he said, like he was talking to a child, that sounds like a pretty clear case of rusty pipes. It's common. We'll put her in the system, but I'm sure she'll turn up. They left. I felt like I was going insane. They were gaslighting me. Just like No, it's not the same. Last night, I was finally forced to wash my own dishes. The sink was full of my plates, my glasses, and that's when I heard it, a wet, gurgling cough from the drain. I leaned in to get a better look. It's not rust. It's thick, it's dark. It smells like pennies and something else, something rotten. This is what she saw. This is what I told her wasn't real. I stuck my hand in. I don't know why. I thought maybe I could find something, maybe the thing that was causing all of this. It felt wrong, wet, hot, and slimy. I tried to pull my hand back and it was stuck, like the drain was sucking on it. I was suddenly very aware that I would be mutilated if anything happened to the garbage disposal switch. That's when I heard a horrible sound of a motor revving up and blades spinning. It was only my neighbor starting his darn lawnmower, but it scared the heck out of me. I pulled with everything I had, and finally my hand came free. My hand was covered in that stuff, and in my palm, stuck there by what looks like a piece of gristle, is something else. It's a blue eye, a brilliant sapphire blue eye. Clara's eye. The police won't return my calls. The plumber I finally hired says the pipes are clean. I'm sitting in my silent house, and all I can hear is the gurgling. It's in every room now, behind every wall. Have you heard it too? I didn't see the sky for 10 years. It's been 15 years since I saw the sky for the first time in a decade, and I still have trouble sleeping without a nightlight. Not because I'm afraid of the dark. I lived in the dark for a long time, but because when the lights are out, my sense of scale disappears. I can't tell if the walls are 10 feet away or 10 inches. I can't tell if the door is locked. My name is June. I'm 43 years old. I work a data entry job from home. I order my groceries online. I don't have friends, and my family is all dead. If you were to Google my name, which I won't give you, you wouldn't find anything. When I was found in 2010, I begged the police and the lawyers to keep my name out of the papers. I was the girl in the cellar, a Jane Doe victim in a mid-sized town that wanted to forget a monster lived among them. They respected my privacy, mostly because my father, the man who put me there, was a respected deacon in our community. The scandal was bad enough without my face plastered on the news. But keeping it inside has rotted me. It's a different kind of captivity. So I'm gonna tell you what happened. I need to put this somewhere where people will believe me. The year was 2000. We survived the Y2K panic. The world didn't end, but mine was about to. I was 18, fresh out of high school, and preparing for college in the fall. I was also in love. Her name was Maya. In the year 2000, in my town, girls didn't kiss girls, not without consequences. My father was a hard man, silent, stoic, the kind of man who believed obedience was the highest form of love. He caught us on a Tuesday. Maya had walked me home, and we were standing by the side of the garage, hidden by the rhododendrons. We kissed. It wasn't anything tawdry. It was sweet, clumsy, and terrifying. The back door opened. My father didn't yell. That was the scariest thing about him. He never yelled. He just stared. He looked at Maya, then at me, with eyes like flat gray stones. He told Maya to go home. Then he told me to go to my room. He didn't speak to me for 3 days. I thought he was just icing me out. I thought the punishment was the silence. I was wrong. On Friday afternoon, he knocked on my bedroom door. "June," he said. His voice was calm. "I need help moving the chest freezer in the basement shelter." My father was a paranoid man. He had spent the late 90s building a storm shelter behind a false wall in the basement. It was his project for when the computers crashed and society collapsed. I followed him down the wooden stairs, past the furnace, to the shelving unit that swung outward on heavy hinges. "It's heavy," he said.
gesturing inside. "Just get on the other side and push." I walked in. The room was concrete, cold, smelling of dried dust and canned vegetables. I turned to grab the corner of the freezer. I heard the heavy thud of the steel door, followed by the metallic clack, clack, clack of the 3 deadbolts engaging. "Dad?" I called out. "Dad, stop joking." The lights flickered once, then buzzed steady. I ran to the door. I pounded on it. I screamed until my throat tasted like blood. I kicked until my toes were bruised violet. He didn't answer. He didn't answer that day or the next. That room became my entire universe for 3,635 days. The first few months were a blur of hysteria and denial. I kept thinking it was a test. Repent, I thought. If I repent, he'll let me out. I screamed apologies at the ceiling. I promised I would never touch a girl again. I promised I'd go to church every day. The room was soundproofed. He'd built it well. The layout was stark. Initially, it was about 12 feet by 12 feet. There was a cot with a thin mattress, a bucket for waste, later replaced, which I'll get to, a sink with cold running water, and crates of non-perishable food intended for the apocalypse. My father would visit, but not to talk. A slot in the bottom of the door, something he must have installed specially, would slide open. A tray would slide in, usually a sandwich or leftovers from a dinner I could smell cooking 2 floors above. Then the tray would slide back out. I tried to catch his fingers once. I shoved my hand through the slot, clawing for him. He didn't recoil. He just calmly took a heavy wooden dowel and shoved it against my hand until I pulled back in pain. He never spoke. It was as if speaking to me would acknowledge that he was doing something monstrous. If he stayed silent, he was just a force of nature, a jailer ordained by God. The boredom was not immediate. Fear occupied me for the first year. But around the second year, the geography of the room changed. This is the part that haunts me the most, the physical alteration of my reality. I had been planning. I had been scratching at the grout of the concrete blocks behind the supply crates with a spoon handle I'd stolen from a tray. It was pathetic, really. I'd made maybe a 1/4 inch of progress. Then came the needles. One morning, my food tray had a glass of milk. It tasted sweet, almost chalky. I was so thirsty, I didn't care. 20 minutes later, the room started to spin. My limbs felt like lead. I crawled to the cot, darkness swallowing me. When I woke up, I don't know how much time had passed. My head felt like it had been split open with an axe. My mouth was dry as sand. I sat up and froze. The room was different. The wall I had been scratching at was gone. The room had extended back another 10 feet. In the new space, he had installed a small, cramped bathroom module, a toilet and a tiny stall shower plumbed into the house's main line. But that wasn't the worst part. In the corners of the ceiling, tiny black domes blinked red. Cameras. And the door? The door was no longer just a steel-reinforced fire door. He'd welded a secondary bar across the front, controlled electronically. I could hear the maglock hum. I threw up. He had drugged me. He had come in here, carried my unconscious body around, worked around me, possibly for days, knocked down a wall, did plumbing work, and sealed me back up. It was the ultimate violation. It proved that I was nothing more than a piece of furniture to him. He wasn't afraid of me escaping. He was just storing me. That was when I stopped trying to dig out. If he could drug me, if he could watch me 24/7, there was no blind spot. Around year 3, a TV appeared. I woke up from another drugged slumber. He did this periodically to do maintenance or clean, to find a small 20-inch box TV on a stand bolted to the floor. It was hooked up to a basic cable line and a DVD player. This was my window. This was how I watched my 20s pass me by. I watched the Twin Towers fall in September of 2001 before I even had the TV, hearing the muffled sounds of the news from the upstairs floorboards, confused and terrified. But with the TV, I saw the aftermath. I saw the invasion of Iraq. I saw the world shifting, becoming harder, angrier. I watched technology explode. Flip phones turned into Blackberries, then into iPhones. I watched pop culture leave me behind. I developed a routine. I had to, or I would have smashed my head against the cinder blocks. Wake up, shower, 3 minutes of hot water, timed, eat the granola or toast provided through the slot, exercise, calisthenics, pacing, then the movies. My father would slide DVDs through the slot. He never asked what I wanted. He just gave me things from his own collection or things he found in the bargain bin. Westerns, old monochrome classics, Casablanca, The Searchers, then oddly, cheap romantic comedies, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I watched them until the disc skipped. I memorized every line. I learned to mimic the accents. I held conversations with imaginary versions of Matthew McConaughey or Judy Garland. It wasn't about entertainment. It was about hearing human voices that weren't screaming. By year 5, I had acclimated. It is a sickening thing to admit, but the human mind is adaptable. The room was my world. The world outside was the fiction on the screen. I stopped hating my father around year 6. Hate takes too much energy. It burns calories you need to survive. I started to view him as a weather pattern. He was the provider. When the slot opened, it rained food. When the lights went out, it was night. I projected emotions onto his silence. Maybe he's sorry, I'd think, chewing on a stale bagel. Maybe he's afraid to let me out because he knows he'd go to prison. He's trapped too. I was delusional, of course. He wasn't trapped. He was living upstairs, probably sitting in his recliner, watching the same football games I watched, drinking beer, sleeping in a bed that smelled like fresh air. The boredom was the true torture. People think of torture as physical pain, whips and chains, but absolute unyielding boredom is worse. It eats your memories. I started forgetting what fresh glass smelled like. I forgot the specific shade of Maya's eyes. I forgot how cold wind felt on a wet cheek. My memories of the outside world became pixelated, replaced by the scenes from the movies. I started talking to the cameras. "Good morning," I'd say to the lens in the corner. "Did you sleep well?" I tossed and turned. The mattress is lumpy. I knew he was watching. Sometimes if I asked for something specific, like Advil for a headache or feminine hygiene products, they would appear in the slot a few hours later. He was listening. That was our intimacy. My needs, his provision. No words. By 2008, the recession hit.
I watched families losing their homes on the news. I looked around my concrete box, rent-free, fed daily, and felt a grotesque spike of gratitude. At least I'm safe, I told myself. The world out there is scary. Here, nothing changes. That was Stockholm Syndrome, full-blown and malignant. In late 2009, I noticed a change. Not in the room, but in the routine. The food trays started coming later. The quality of the food dropped. Sometimes it was just a can of soup and a spoon, unheated. Through the slot, I caught a glimpse of his hand one day. It was shaking. The skin was liver-spotted and paper-thin. He was getting old. Panic set in. Not hope, panic. If he dies, I realized, I die. Nobody knew about the room. He built it himself. The door was disguised behind a shelving unit filled with paint cans and old tools. If he had a heart attack in the kitchen, he would rot upstairs, and I would starve to death downstairs. 10 feet of earth and concrete between me and salvation. I started hoarding food. I saved crackers, wrappers, half bottles of water. I hid them under the loose corner of the mattress. My escape didn't come from a grand plan. It didn't come from me overpowering him. It came, as everything in my life did, with silence. It was a Tuesday in August 2010. Lunch didn't come. I waited. I paced. I talked to the camera. "I'm hungry," I said. "Please." Nothing. Dinner time passed. The news came on at 6 p.m. I watched it, stomach growling. The next morning, no breakfast. I screamed. I hadn't screamed in 5 years. Dad, please. My voice cracked. It was weak from disuse. I drank water from the tap to soothe my throat and screamed again. By the third day, the terror was a physical weight. The air in the room was getting stale. The ventilation system seemed to be running on low power or had shut off. I banged the metal heavy chair against the door for hours until my hands blistered. He's dead, I thought. He's dead, and I am in my tomb. I lay on the floor watching the crack of light under the door. I hallucinated. I thought I saw Maya standing by the bathroom smiling at me. Then, around the 4th day, I had lost exact count, I heard a sound. It wasn't the slot opening. It was a heavy boom from upstairs, like a door being kicked in. Then voices, heavy boots, a dog barking. I scrambled to the door. I didn't have the strength to bang the chair anymore. I pressed my face to the cold steel. "I'm here," I shrieked. "Down here! Basement! Shelvings!" I didn't know if they could hear me. Soundproofing works both ways. I heard the thudding of boots on the stairs. I heard men talking. "Clear down here. Looks like just storage." "No," I screamed. "I'm behind the shelvings. Push the shelvings." I picked up the heavy chair with the last of my adrenaline and smashed it against the door. Clang! Silence outside. "Did you hear that?" the voice said. Clang! It came from the wall. I heard the scraping of the shelving unit being dragged across the concrete. Then a voice, muffled but close. "Hello? Is someone back there?" "Help me," I sobbed. "My name is June, please." "Jesus Christ," the voice whispered. Then came the tools, the screech of a circular saw biting into metal, the sparks flying. It took them an hour to cut through the heavy locks and the steel bar my father had welded. When the door finally swung open, the light from their flashlights was blinding. It felt like fire in my eyes. I covered my face, curling into a ball on the floor. A police officer, a woman, touched my shoulder. She said, "It's okay." Her voice was trembling. "You're okay now." I learned the truth a few days later, from a hospital bed hooked up to IVs and wearing sunglasses because the room lights hurt too much. My father had suffered a massive stroke in the kitchen. He had dropped dead instantly. He laid there for 3 days before a neighbor, noticing his mail piling up and the lawn unmowed, which he was meticulous about the lawn, called for a wellness check. They found him, they cleared the house, they were about to leave when I banged the chair. 10 years. The adjustment it wasn't like in the movies. There was no joyous montage. I was 30 pounds underweight. I had a vitamin D deficiency that made my bones ache. My social skills were non-existent. I was terrified of open doors. I couldn't be in a room with a window for 6 months because the concept of outside terrified me. The infinite sky felt like it was going to crush me. And the technology. God, the technology. Everything was touchscreens and social media. I felt like a caveman thawing out of ice. I sold the house. I couldn't step foot in it again. I had it sold by a lawyer, instructing them to destroy the contents of the basement before showing it. The money from the house and his life insurance allows me to live quietly. It's blood money, but I feel I earned it. I'm writing this now because I recently found a box of old DVDs in a thrift store. I saw a copy of How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I stood there in the aisle, clutching the plastic case, and I started weeping. A nice lady asked if I was okay.
I couldn't explain to her that this stupid movie was my only friend for 3 years. I barely touched the surface of what happened in that room. The games I played to stay sane, the specific cruelties of the renovations, the dreams I had. It's late now. The nightlight is flickering and it's making me anxious. I need to go check the locks on my apartment door again. It'll be the 10th time tonight. If you have questions, ask. There is so much I haven't said, and talking to a therapist feels too clinical. I'd rather talk to you in the dark. I think I hear a noise outside. It's probably just the wind, but I'm going to check the locks, just in case.